People, what the hell is going on in LA when we come back? Go. Welcome to another episode of the South Star Classroom. Omar is out today, but he is with us in spirit. Would love to have been here for this conversation, especially. I'm Charles, and that's David. And before, David, you say something, we need you to go and sign up. We have a YouTube page. I don't want you to just depend on Facebook, all right? I don't know what's going on with these social media platforms. I don't know how long I'll even be on social media. So I want you to make sure that you go ahead, sign up for our YouTube page, Agentic Shows. You can find backdated shows there. And you know, if anything were to ever happen, that's where you can find us. So again, the channel is Agentic Shows, and you can hit the link. Brother, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be here. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, things are good. Busy. Kids' school are like finishing up. Got the first progress reports from our school. So that's been
how
good.
Little man do?
He's doing good, man. He finished his first progress report with all A's. So that's a first for him, you know, and so it's a big deal. So
that's beautiful.
You know, yeah, man. He's like, you know, he had a dentist appointment this morning. I took him to, and check this out. I was like, you've got a couple of subs today, because they have a trip that some kids went on. And I'm like, you're going to be gone for half the day, then maybe half a day with some subs. Do you want to just stay home? You know, And he said, no, I better go for the classes that I can attend because I don't want to miss anything, you know, any assignments. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, you know.
Whose child is this? Is that what you said? Is that what was going on?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, when I was his age, I would have been like, I'm staying home. But it's good to hear him say that. I just reflected on that. And I'm like, that's not by accident, you know. So yeah, proud of him. So he's finishing that up, and you know, we're getting ready for tonight. We got playoff game number 3 against the Dodgers, the San Diego Padres, and the Dodgers are in the playoffs right now, and hopefully we knock them out. We haven't been this far in the playoffs in like 15 or 16 years, and San Diego and Los Angeles definitely have a long-standing what do you call that? You know, when two
rivalry.
teams rivalry. That's right, man.
And they hate each other.
We do. We hate LA. We hate. There's other words I could use. I won't use them now, but we hate LA and all things about LA. So that's
well,
coming
you know,
up tonight.
I'm from the back. You know, I'm a tortured Cubs fan and A's fan. LA doesn't fit into me that much, but my Giants friends, the people that like the Giants, hate LA as well. So you know, it's It is what it is, man. But we're gonna see because they paid for it. That's probably one of the richest, if not the richest, one of the richest just rosters in not just baseball but sports. So we're gonna see, man. I don't know who's pitching tonight, but we're gonna see how that's going. Oh no, somebody said the Eagles. No, we're talking about baseball. So I don't want to get it mixed up. But yeah, man. So there's a lot of stuff happening in LA right now. I have not been in the news on it. I have not been following it. I turned it off. I just haven't. And I did that because I knew we was going to talk about this on some level. And this is your show, brother. So what the hell is happening in LA, brother?
Wow.
Do you have a link you want me to put up or something? What is going on?
Yeah, let me share this link real quick. I'll put it in the private chat. And if you want to send that out so people can see. I mean, it's pretty easy to find. This is a particular angle that this article that I just shared covers, but let me just give some background.
Just talk to me. Tell me about it. Like, I ain't never read this.
So this goes back to actually like October of last year, right? There was a meeting that was happening in October of 2021 between 3 Los Angeles City Council members and the president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. So like the organization that kind of is the connector to all of the different labor organizations in Los Angeles, right? These three council members happen to be Democrats meeting with a labor union federation organization, you know, and so there's something there with this like connection that we hear between, you know, Democrats and organized labor. It's a real thing. Anyways, I'm going to move on. We'll come back to that. So essentially, there was one meeting that they held, not just the only meeting, but there at this particular meeting, and somehow somebody recorded the meeting. It was recorded, and nobody knew it was recorded until about a week ago, when a particular individual who is anonymous because they knew what they were doing dropped it on Reddit. And from Reddit, it just kind of went crazy, right? And the person is still anonymous. There's some theories about who it is and what their intentions are, but you know, you think about it, you have this organization, the California Federation, the LA County Labor Federation's home offices are bugged, or they have, you know, somebody working on the inside. And just think of how many other conversations there are more conversations. This is the tip of the iceberg. They just put this one tape out in October of 2022, a year later, right before a very important election, right? From the national level all the way down to city politics in Los Angeles. So that's what happened. Now the content of the tape is what we'll get into next. But before we do that, you know, I want to talk about a couple of important points here. You know, around just what happened, not necessarily going into the meat of the content, because that's a whole like other level. But we'll get there. But I wanted to stop and just check in with you and see if you had any questions, or if there are any questions or comments in the chat just around like what I explained. Was there, you know, any like questions about the procedure, the how this thing happened, et cetera, who these people were?
Yeah, I think from what I gather from what you're saying is that these are city council members. These are Latina city council members. There was a private conversation whatever. They were meeting somewhere. I didn't know they was being recorded, and they was apparently going wild in that joint, and it got out, and then all hell was broken loose, and everybody's, you know, kind of sniping and talking and calling for people to resign and things of that nature. I have not watched any videos of it. I have abstained from any articles about it, like, because I really want to just come in fresh, because I'm just very curious about what it is and why. And so let me know why people are outraged. Let me know what was said. If you want, I can, you know, do you want me to put up the video or?
No. Let's keep going. Let's if we get there, we'll do that. So yeah, again, before we jump into the content of what was said, the who, again, were 3 Los Angeles City Council members who are still, well, one of the 3 has resigned, but the other 2 have yet to resign. And then the 4th person that was in this meeting was the person that runs, and I believe he resigned, the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. So the important thing is here, all 4 were Latinos, right? Having a conversation together. What I want to bring up here and why this is important, you know, to the work that we do in schools, is around, and this is a point that I think some people missed because they go right to the racial taglines, which is natural because the stuff that they said is really sick and really nasty. But before we get there, you know, what this particular case represents is elected officials that are meeting outside of a city council meeting with a very powerful special interest group, labor, right? So you have Democrats meeting with labor behind closed doors, just so happened to be recorded, but they didn't think it was being recorded, in a secret
Wait,
meeting.
isn't it illegal to have a wait? What's the amount?
They didn't have a
like
so they didn't have a quorum. So that's
okay. You
not,
can't
that's
have a
not,
quorum.
so exactly, but that could potentially be an issue. But here's the flip side of that. They were talking about the redistricting process in Los Angeles County and LA, right? The city of LA. And that was kind of the content of what they were talking about. Everything kind of stems from there. There's a process that you have to go through when you're doing redistricting. You have to form committees, you have to engage the public, you have to have data, and then you present your findings. And if you're going to redraw district lines, you present it to the public. There's public hearings. This is what we call democracy. It's what we call transparency and due process. Well, what they were doing in this meeting is, getting information and input and direction from labor, and labor is getting direction and information from city council leadership. Labor is saying, I will do whatever it takes to get the three of you elected, right? And how they're going to do that? With campaign contributions, with with endorsements, with getting the millions of laborers in Los Angeles to pick a particular candidate. Like, this is how these things happen behind closed doors. So they're basically saying, let's redistrict like this, and if we can redistrict like this, we will deliver votes to get you elected. What they were talking about in this redistricting context was, and complaining about, is that African Americans have overrepresented power in particular districts in Los Angeles, right? So so not only are they talking about a subject outside of, in an inappropriate forum, meaning like a closed meeting with a secret recorder, but they're also complaining about the magnitude of power that African Americans, which they call the blacks, have in Los Angeles County. And that's where things start to get racial, right? And so I mean, the thing I want to point out here is two things. We hear often about government, about transparency to the public, about shared decision making. No, these people were having a closed door meeting where they were going to make some decisions and exchange favors, right, for one another, all in the spirit of keeping and maintaining power, right? Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two is, it's interesting that the three council members also happen to be Democrats that have deep ties to labor. So when we say that there's a concern around the deep ties and funding and political funding that goes to particular candidates from labor who happen to be Democrats, this is it in action. This is really what it is. And so, labor might say they represent all workers and to spread democracy, and so do politicians. And here, in this case, we see that they're actually talking specifically about holding on to power, and they're talking about holding on to power for their racial group, for Latinos, right? And talking crap about almost everybody else in the process, right? So we still haven't gotten to the content yet, but I mean, that's kind of, those are the two things that I wanted to like bring forward in terms of, how public agencies are supposed to run. We put so much trust in elections, and whether they fair, they not fair. And then we have to better understand how our elected officials actually, do they engage the public in public forums, or do they do like secret backroom dealings? Because they do. And this is a situation where they're essentially found out and, ratted themselves out. So stop there. That was kind of a mouthful before we get into what they said. You've run schools, you've served on boards, and we often in the charter school world, we get lambasted over lack of transparency, over poor governance. And sure, it happens. But here's a situation in, I think, our biggest city, maybe New York's the biggest city. LA is huge. The city of LA is massive. And you have essentially corruption happening, right? It's anything but open, accountable, and transparent governance. So what has your experience been in schools? And like, how do you see this connection? Do you see how would this potentially apply to? Should we be looking out for this in terms of how our districts are governed, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm black. So I think that for me, I think that there's always been, I mean, I think a lot of people know that a lot of times when politicians show up to cast that vote, that the conversations have already happened. This is the, the meeting is the theater of what has been discussed behind closed doors happening. You know what I mean? I think two, I think that it's always about power, and I think that people need to understand that. Like I'm just not shocked by any of it, and I think I come off as very cynical because none of this ever surprises me. I'm not like shocked. I'm not like maligned. I don't feel any strong feelings because I went to school board meetings for years and stayed till 12 and 1 and all that stuff and saw how things work. It's just, I'm usually shocked that people are shocked. I think that's 2. 3, as black people, and I think this is where it starts to get a little touchy, right? I mean, there's a reason why we have a black and brown together kind of show because it's not always hunky-dory either way that goes. And I mean, there's things inside of our black community and different sects of like our black community, the same way there are in brown communities or whatnot. But there's also instances where brown folks and black folks do not be working and seeing eye to eye. And I think that there were people that were hurt from what I did see, which I tried to stay away from Twitter. I'm really trying to stay away from social media. I don't know how I'm going to run these shows and do this if I'm like planning on leaving social media altogether, but that's a different conversation. But I do think that there have been people in this younger generation, black and brown people, that truly believe that we're in this together, that we're working towards coalition, that felt like we were kind of in the same boat. And I think that some of them were truly disappointed. I think some of them were, when you have to look at that person that you've been working with kind of like directly. And I think that, part of the way how I think about it, David, and I've said this before, I've talked about this. I think that there are things within each of our individual groups that we need to work on, and then we come together. But I'm not putting all of my eggs in the black and brown basket for like black survival. Like I'm not doing that because that's not how the world actually works. These were people of like mind and who believed in the same thing, and also that feel some type of ownership to labor. Like you alluded to it. I'm gonna say it right.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like I didn't listen to the video, but I feel like I would bet a lot of money that I feel like the air of the conversation is like labor is kind of our thing. Like that's kind of like us. So you're gonna be rocking with us type. And I think that it just kind of came to light. And then it kind of blew up and it's been handled because people are calling for, people to step down and things like that. So my experience in helping run schools and going to school board meetings and things like that is I'm not surprised. But my question to my black folks and to my brown progressive people that want to be together is, aside from just getting them out of office, like what do you actually want to do to truly work together and not. And I would caution my people, and I would caution those brown people and those black people that want to work together, is don't do it leading with emotion. Like do it from a power brokerage place and state of mind, so everybody can come to the table and say what they want, and then people can move forward. And I'm gonna just end on this because it's a long-winded answer. But as a black person who likes gangster movies, which I shouldn't, because they didn't like black people either, but it does say something about the mafia structure. It says something about the my family structure of people that will kill each other, that don't like each other, but they will sit at a table and they will be business-like approach, and they will cut up a city and they will make rules and pacts, and then they would abide by those. And those rules and pacts, ironically enough, to bring this full circle, often involve what? The most powerful structure in a lot of cities of power, which is union and labor. And so those would be my kind of takeaways. I don't want my people to just be emotional about stuff. I just that's and I know somebody's going to take that the wrong way, but I've seen it so much. I've watched people at our school board meetings that you've been a part of, that I've been to, like they play on the emotions of black people. They play on the emotions of brown people, but they speak to the sensibilities of these white people. And I think that we have to stop allowing ourselves to be put in that type of predicament.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, I think it's fair and it's needed for people. People are going to be, I wasn't shocked either. I'm waiting for the next tape to drop because it's coming, you know, and I'm sure everybody that's been sitting around those like dark backroom tables, those rooms, those dark rooms, smoky rooms, you know, I'm like, they got to be like sweating bullets, right? Wondering if their stuff was recorded too, right? And so, but I agree with you. You got to keep, you got to keep moving forward. You got to keep working to build coalitions. So doing two things at the same time, understanding that, that there is racism that happens, with when white people aren't even around, amongst ourselves, right? Even within our own groups, that's a real thing. But you can't let it paralyze you. You're right, and get so bogged down that you just like stop the work. I think both things have to happen at the same time. And so, the other thing is, and now we'll get into the comments. I mean, some of these comments are so outlandish. There were certain, Trump said all these crazy things and nothing happened to him. And I'm like, well, something's going to happen to him. But I'm like, Trump's not our guy. Well, our people are our people, right? We can't hold Trump accountable. White folks can hold Trump accountable. I can hold Latinos accountable. You can work to hold African Americans accountable. Like our communities can hold ourselves accountable. And that's what we're doing right now. That's what they're doing in LA with, full court press to demand that these 3 council members, now just 2, because one's already resigned, step away
Nuri,
because
right?
they can no longer. Yeah, Nuri, the board president has resigned, and the other 2 need to resign. They can be sorry, they can make their apologies, but there's no way they can move forward with any sense of public trust anymore, because it's interesting also, Charles. It's most of the language, I think 90% of it, emanated from Martinez, who was the board president. So it matters what you say, and it also matters what you don't say. So if I'm in a room with somebody and I'm spouting out, racist comments about any group, including my own, and I have people at my circle and they just like nod their heads and they're like, "Yep," but they don't say anything. They don't push back. Well, you know what? You too, my friend. And so these other people were in that room and they didn't check her. They didn't hold her accountable, right? And so they get kind of lumped into that group, as they should. And so, I mean, the comments were, this is where it really gets interesting. And it's like, this is also why, and I'm not saying this to defend them at all, because I think what they did was atrocious. But I will say, in general, humanity and human beings we are flawed people. We are flawed organisms, right? We have good days and we have bad days. And many of us can go down this road of looking at the world and becoming, developing or holding racist thoughts and ideas. You're in government. This is why government has particular roles to protect people, right? To protect you from yourself sometimes. So, if you are going to be having discussions, deliberations, do it within the purview of the public. There's kind of a natural accountability in there. When people go off to the side and do these side deals, you don't know what's going to happen. The worst comes out, when people look around and say like, well, nobody's watching, so it's fair game, right? Right. I mean, Trump is smart enough to go out to a golf course, right, without clubs, with his guys, and have a 30-minute meeting, right? It's like nobody's, and they check everybody for wires, right? Anyhow,
and I just want to say real quick, they said she at first she only resigned as board president. No, she has since resigned. She is fully resigned. She's out. Because now she's being mocked, because I think she said something about little Latina girls. Hopefully they can
have something an example. You can't, and that's okay. It's all right.
I mean, I think she probably still will be. Listen, man. I think that there's don't lose your space. Please don't lose your point, because I think it's an important thing. I don't think that I think her community may throw her away in public. I don't think that they will in private. I think that it is one of those things where it is, I think there's a lot of people that probably listened to that and heard that, especially from her community, that was like, all right, you got caught. Like, it is what it is.
I mean,
get low
So
like, you know, come back when you can. But I'll put it up for the folks that said, but she just for Mama Toya and Jamoke, she has fully resigned from the board.
Yeah.
But does that fix the deep-seated problem? But go ahead.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. But you know, at the end of the day, Charles, you know, I mean, you think about like if you watch or follow big city politics, you know, if you look at Oakland City Council, Oakland school board meetings, man, it's like if you watch them in the last couple of weeks, they spend 90% of their time talking about things that probably matter to like 20% of the people. They have actual real business to conduct. And so for LA, it's important for them to have these folks gone so they can continue just doing the basic work of managing a huge city. They can't do it until then. The people won't let them. They had 2 meetings canceled already because people wouldn't leave the chambers. But I mean, some of the comments are, I guess there's another council member in LA who adopted a young Black child, African-American child. And I mean, Martinez went as far as she went off on the child, man, calling the child ese changuito, which means like little monkey, right?
Really?
I don't need, yeah, man. I mean, just like basically, you know, saying that, and then also saying that, you know, the only reason this white, I think he's gay, city council member adopted this Black child is so, you know, he could parade the little child around like a Gucci purse, you know, and get points from people of color, right? I'm like, they're talking about a child, period, right? Said some other nasty things about the kid too.
This wine bottle is gone. The wine bottle is gone. That's just.
I'm gonna put it out there. They also talked about, you know, other politicians and how they had like, you know, they were problematic because they side with the Blacks. They kept saying the Blacks. They're like, oh no, man, you know, Castillo might be Latino, but he's with the Blacks, and so like that's a problem, right? Like that's a problem, right? And so there's this like the racial kind of like, you know, like you got to be down with the people. You can't be down with other people. I don't even know what they meant by that, but even like the language that they use by, you know, saying the Blacks, I'm like, these people are living in the 70s, man, or the long ago era. Let's see. Martinez also, in addition to ridiculing African American people, so they're all Latinas, right? And so I don't want to get ahead of it, but and we'll reveal this at the appropriate time. But you know, one of the things that we learned through this research project that we did around brown leaders working in schools that serve brown children was that it's true, we are not all the same. Like we have to recognize the diaspora that Latino people are, and then learn from one another's strengths. In this situation, you have Martinez, who, you know, has lighter skin, born here. I don't know, her parents might have been born here. You know, she's Mexican American, but she's clearly identifying with the oppressor in punching down to a new group that is moving into Koreatown in Los Angeles. They're like, it's not even Koreans anymore. There's these short, dark Mexican people, funny looking people. They're from Oaxaca, right? Oaxaca is in southern Mexico. And
is that what she said?
Yeah, that's what she said. So most of the immigration that's coming from Mexico now is coming from southern Mexico, right? Oaxaca, Chiapas. These are 2 of the states in Mexico that have the richest resources, but they are the poorest states, right? Because within Mexico, there's racism, right? And they extract resources, and the quality of life for many of these people is extremely low, right? So the Mexican government is actually being racist to these people. They have to immigrate to the United States to work, and now you have Mexican Americans punching down on them because they're short and they're dark and they're funny looking.
Wait, so hold on, Dave. Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
So are you telling me that Latino folks and Latina folks, Latin that y'all got your own brown paper bag test? Is that what you're telling me? That y'all got your own?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Talk to me about brown colorism. Because see, listen, black colorism is always out there. We always talking about who can pass as a black person and who, there are black people that like there are famous people that have been celebrated as white that turned out that they were actually black. And for whatever reason, right, their mother may have been raped by a slave owner or whatever the case was, but it usually is only reflected so broadly as a black issue. So, I mean, I ain't trying to have you air your people's business out, but educators.
This is another layer to this story, which I feel like, unfortunately, is probably being passed over because of the volume of the comments that were made, the anti-black comments that were made. Now we have anti-indigenous comments that are made. So absolutely, Charles. I mean, there's it's colorism thrives in almost any system, right? And so when people talk about like systems of like white oppression, white skin color, the North Star, it's real, and it exists in so many different ways and shapes and forms in different places. And so you actually have this separation of Mexican Americans that have lived here, that are established, that don't even see their own people as their own people, right? And looking down on them because they speak a different language there, because they're indigenous, right? At one point, we were all indigenous people, right? And so those people, we were just further along the spectrum towards, I don't know what you want to call it, I mean, inter-Latino, inter-brown racism as well as classism, right? And so it exists. I think the other piece is that, and this is for us, for Latinos to call out, is the anti-black racism that lives and unfortunately thrives in our communities and in our houses, right? This is a moment for us to really think and like those the three men in that room in October of 2021 didn't speak up when Martinez was giving her speech or her preamble. But like, it's up to each and every one of us. And sometimes it's hard because it's like, I remember when I was young, I must have been in like the 6th grade, right? And 5th grade maybe. And I had a girlfriend, one of my first girlfriends. I won't say her name, but she's still out there. She's a wonderful person. I probably shouldn't have had a girlfriend in the 5th grade. I don't know. That's kind of crazy. But anyway,
wait, how old is your son? What grade is your son in right now?
Oh, but he's in the 7th, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
Continue. I mean, we were friends. We were more than friends. But anyways, it was totally innocent. But she was African American, right? And when I brought her name forward to my house, I remember getting a very lukewarm, response from my family, like not everybody, but some people. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I had never expected that, right? I had never expected that. And so, and families grow and they change and they evolve, and my family has too, but it existed in my family, anti-black racism. It exists in so many of our homes, in our Latino households, and that's a fact, and that's something for us to confront. The other thing, Charles, is the class thing that's happening here, with a Mexican American, citizen from the United States of America punching down on her own people because they happen to probably be undocumented and from the lovely, beautiful state of Oaxaca in Mexico. I've been there many times. It's a beautiful place. And so, the other story there for me, and these are all things that I'm learning and kind of reflecting on as I'm growing up, is my family was the first family in our San Diego neighborhood to buy a home in this particular neighborhood, like in the early 70s, right? Mainly white folks. And my family caught a lot of shade for moving in because everyone was like, here goes the neighborhood, right? So years later, I'm probably like 10 or 11 now. And we get some neighbors that move in across the street that are from Vietnam, Southeast Asia, right? The residuals of the U.S. involvement in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, et cetera, caused an incredible amount of immigration. And so now we have people living across the street from us, and they're growing corn in their front yard because they are people of the earth. They grow their own food, and they're farming. They're farmers. And my parents were like, "Oh my God, do you see these people that are growing corn in the front lawn? What is?" I'm like, "Stop." And by this point, I knew to stop my parents. And I said, "This is exactly what your white neighbor said when you moved into this neighborhood. Now you're just carrying on this legacy of classism and racism." And I was old enough to like check my parents on it, and they're just like, "You know, you're kind of right. You're kind of right." I was probably like 12, but I knew it wasn't right, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm just tying some of the stuff that happened in LA to some of my personal stories, because we all have these stories, you know. And I think this thing that's happened in LA, beyond the city council, I think is a moment for all of us to think differently about confronting racism when we see it in our own communities and in our own homes.
Well, man, I love that you went there, because you know, I think part of it is just kind of showing the empathy for this larger.
I was woke before woke. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, but I think what you're doing is, I think you're being a human. I think you're showing empathetic moments. Like, listen, I'm a black person. There's racism all over the place, and there's anti-blackness, and there's anti-blackness a lot from white people, but there's from brown people, and there's also from black people. And I remember being a kid. I'll even call us out, right? Like, you know, I grew up in North Oakland when I moved to California, but I lived in East Oakland with my aunt for a little bit, right? And I think you know where I'm going with this. So I remember getting woken up every morning. So this is when it was like the part of East Oakland. I stayed off of Pippin with my aunt, and it's like deep East Oakland, close to San Leandro, and it was like half black and it was half brown, and like a lot of brown people had chickens and stuff like that. And I'd be like, "Yo, like." I remember just being like 11 years old and being like, what is this? And my aunt stopped me and was like, "What you think black people do in Alabama? What do you think that like when you're poor, you get the animals, you grow your food. Why would we buy it?" Like, you know what I mean? But she was like kind of breaking that down and she was showing me this link. She didn't have the language. She wasn't anti-black is somewhat of a relatively newer term that people use. Anti whatever is kind of, you know, it's somewhat of a newer, you know, that was when everything kind of fell into racism. But she had to educate me, like, you know, just around where we came from. And I think what we're doing right now is I want both of us to have a conversation and say what advice we'd give to the black and brown people who were hurt or who were impacted by this stuff coming out, but also what we would say to those council members, because I think that people would be surprised, like at the level of empathy for both of those folks. Them people was dead ass wrong for what they said and what they did and their feelings. But here's the thing: in today's society, everybody just knows how to hide better. Everybody knows how to deliver the right answer better, but nobody wants to fucking talk about what they really feel so we can deal with it and move on. Like, if you don't know about a culture, there has to be a place where we can have that dialogue so people can hear each other and then start to actually grow, as opposed to just hiding better. Because we're not making people more tolerable. We're not making people less racist. We're just programming people to have the right language that they can hide behind, so they'll say one thing publicly but still feel something different privately. And I think that that's important. And I know this. Listen, man, this is why I'm very honest with us, bro. Like, I'm like, look, there is black conversations that need to happen with black people with closed doors so we can get through our shit before we come back out with brown people. And I know brown people got their own shit that they need to deal with behind closed doors so they can come out. Like, and Oakland is a very interesting place, right? Because everybody thinks there's this huge black and brown, you know, unity thing. Well, when I was a student, black was like the majority or close to the majority. We were more ubiquitous than we are now. And then you started to get like black male achievement and things like that. But then Latinos became the overwhelming, like, larger group. And what started as, we together, there were brown people like in their meetings. I remember I used to show up to Lynn meetings and they were very nice to me. And it was funny because they would just say this in front of me. But like, they're like, "Nah, man, we're the majority now. Why is there black male achievement, and not brown male achievement?" And here's the thing. even though I might have felt some kind of way about them saying that in the moment, I appreciate the honesty because it's the reality of, listen, man, people keep saying we together on stuff, but everybody's not in the same boat. We might be in the same ocean. Some people own rafts and some people are on yachts. And like, until we start to actually have that conversation, all that black and brown unity shit is going to go out the window. All that black and brown, like Asian unity, whatever it is. And what I tell my people all the time is, we have to know what we want as black people, and we have to be okay. And we need to say that, and we need to stand in that. And then we could come together. And I'll end on my long soliloquy with this. Chairman Fred Hampton had it right. Chairman Fred Hampton was so clear on what he wanted for black people that he didn't feel any kind of way when he went to the brown folks. Like Huey Newton knew what he wanted for black people. So when he went to Cesar Chavez, he's like, hey man, I'm black and this is what I want. You're brown and you want this. Where are the through lines? It wasn't some fake ass alliance. It was actually what's going to work for you and what's going to work for us. And that's what allowed Chairman Fred Hampton, and people should read this. He went to a white group. He went to poor white people. And he said, people think we're supposed to hate each other, but they bashing your heads in the streets too. These police don't like you either. This power structure doesn't like you either. But you have to know who you are and what you want, or you're going to keep getting this situation where poor white people are going to continue to vote against their best interests. I read this book in college, man, called What's the Matter with Kansas? And it was about, why do poor white people from Kansas vote against their own interests? And what it was is that richer white people had to do this thing. They had to give you a new boogeyman. So don't worry about the rich white people, right? You might be poor, but you better than them niggas. You better than them black people, and you better than them brown people. And it was it was such a powerful strategy that we still see it play out. And I think that I grew up with I lived in Kentucky. I lived in Appalachian, right? Like not too far from the Appalachian Mountains, right? It's really, really poor white people there that I grew up with, right? So I just had a different vision, but we got to stop being afraid to have these conversations, and we got to just say the shit. And this is why I appreciate old black and old Italian people in Maywood. They get along on some level, but them two type of people don't care about saying the shit that they got to say to each other. And I'm going to just end on saying, I appreciate Spike Lee. I think Spike Lee in movies like Do the Right Thing or Jungle Fever, where he had those conversations, mostly with black and Italian, but he had the conversation and he gave them a microphone too. Like, yo, this is how we feel coming over here. So I know that was long and might have been convoluted, but I think that you and I sitting here having this conversation, it's like, I think it somewhat opens a gateway to people, man, but you got to know what you want. If you don't know what you want, they're going to keep swaying us. They're going to keep lumping us in together. And when they lump us in together with no clarity, that's when you get crabs in the barrel. That's when you get people that's when Nuri is taking secret meetings with labor to be like, well, we labor, we the brown people, we the majority. This is our thing. Are you sticking with us or are you with the blacks? And we need to have a real conversation. And I say that humbly as somebody who's not perfect, as somebody who fucks up a lot in his own personal life, as everybody got their issue. Every group got their issue. And until we can all put that shame down and stop hiding and actually be who we supposed to be, that's the only way we can move forward as a people. I will end my Martin Luther King rant there.
That was great, man. Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything really I don't have anything to add, outside of what you said. I think the one thing that's helped me understand, power dynamics and understand particular situations and to be an observer first, and be a listener, and also to give space for people to like tell their stories, was for me to actually do that work internally, right? The more I got to know like my own story, my family story, my family's history, the more firmly I felt that I was like, the more firmly I was planted on the ground, on the earth, right? I knew my story, I knew my history, the history of my people. I know where I stand in terms of space and time, right? That for me is ultimately grounding. And so it's helped me to understand both why racism exists. It's helped me to understand brown racism and classism, and all these different things. I understand it with a little bit of education as well, and I feel like those two things, like education, you get your education from your home. Sometimes we have to unlearn things that we learn from the home,
Right.
but really understanding, where you stand in this world, in this universe, and how your people got to where you are. And once you stand firmly on your own 2 feet, it's hard to be rocked by actions and words that come from other people and other forces. And it gives you the strength to be able to stop and listen, and to be challenged, and to take hard feedback, um, and to respond to those things, and to know better than to, you know, yeah. I just, the last thing I'll say is, you know, there are millions of people that live in the city of Los Angeles. There are billions of
Bruh,
people in the world.
it's huge.
Most of us, the vast majority of us, don't sit in those power broker seats, right? And so there's definitely something about power that corrupts, right?
Mhm.
We're seeing it now. It's like cutting back the onion, and it's like, oh, don't stop cutting. I can't see. My eyes are watery. They're burning. I don't want to see anymore. We're gonna see more, but I think I want to be clear in terms of people that are working on the ground, that we know need to continue to work together to build bridges, right? Especially coming out of COVID, and coming out of the racial awakening that this country's had, or insurrection, is to keep working together, because the things that these 3 or 4 people said in this room was nasty. It was horrific. It was racist. I personally feel like they need to be removed from politics, from the public eye. That's my stance on it. But
Mhm.
I don't want to believe that that's how we all, kind of people on the ground that are doing the work, feel in our hearts. I think there's a lot of really good people. It's brought out a lot of really powerful voices. I've learned about a lot of coalitions that exist cross race in Los Angeles. They've been showing up to the city council. There's work that's being done on the ground, right? That work has to continue, um, and we just got to keep marching forward and hold people accountable, like we said. So.
Well, in closing, man, I would ask you, what's your advice for the black two groups, the black and brown people that were hurt by what happened, and that are, or
Yeah.
the black and brown coalitions that might have been impacted by this news kind of happening and have to kind of like react to this? And then what's your advice to the people that are being ousted right now?
Well, I think I'll start with the second question.
Okay.
If I were Kevin De Leon or Cedillo, I think Martinez has already stepped back. I think, the way that these things often work is, like, you're a politician, you have a PR team, they probably hire consultants to help get them out of this crisis, help to manage them through this crisis. I'm like, this is big. It's not gonna go away. Sometimes things blow over. This is not gonna blow over. And there's probably more stuff that's gonna come out. So my simple advice to them is, like, there's no hate. There's no hate in my heart towards them, but I think they need to, like, do some deep introspection around, how they see the world. They need to step away to allow the people of Los Angeles to continue to conduct the business that needs to happen at that level of city council. They're just a distraction now. That's my quick take. And then for people, Charles, I think I already said it. It's for people that were hurt, to know that, while the comments were, extremely, hurtful to so many people, um, what I've seen and what I would recommend, people to do, is to, like, lean in even harder to work together across different backgrounds. I've seen, like, a lot of amazing, African American oriented community groups in LA crossing over, and now connecting with, groups that support indigenous, Mexican communities in Los Angeles, and other activist community based organizations. People are coming together around this. I think, for one, to help them to heal across these racial lines, and then to continue to, like, build real true power for the people going forward. And when I say power to the people, and for the people, I'm talking about the people on the ground. I'm not talking about these leaders that we elect, that end up you know, in these positions of power and clearly are taking advantage of the trust that the public has put into them. So I think it's a political shakeup on many levels. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I hope that, you know, this just, how would I say this, forces politicians to do the right thing, even when they believe that no one is watching, right?
Mhm.
And it's like this, you know, and if you know, if you do have, you know, if you're one of these people and if you identify with these things that these people were saying, then you have work to do. You know, you have work to do. You shouldn't be in a decision making position, and
Yeah.
that goes for, like, you know, teachers, school leaders, you know, school board members, superintendents. This is should be a wake up call, not just focused on the city of Los Angeles and the city council, but for all of us that, you know, work in these positions where we can impact the lives of people for better or for worse.
Yeah, man. I think my first I'll go in the other order. I think to the people who are hurt, here's what I would say. Feel your feelings. You're owed that. You should be able to have that. And can you handle the comments while I'm doing this part?
Yes,
Because
sir.
I want to make
Yep.
yeah, go ahead. Let me
Yep.
not touch it right now. I would say here's what I'm gonna tell my people. Find love, man. Like find if in this, let me tell you what I mean when I say have love. When you look towards politicians, to teachers, to celebrities, to like love you, not to function in their roles and their jobs and understand what they do, but to like love you or love your children, like you will always be disappointed. Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe somebody do something great or whatever, and that's by the grace of God. But you know, you need these things to function. And I don't like us having our emotions and heart tied up into these public type of people, whether they're celebrities or they're politicians, man. Like they're just people, and people mess up, man. You know, I grew up. I don't know if you know this, David. I grew up. You know, my parents were getting clean when I was in like 6th grade, 7th grade, and I used to go, you know, to NA meetings with my mom, and NA meetings is the safest places that I've ever kind of been before, and it's because you see all kind of people of all kind of races, like, but really, and at the root of everything, man, it's like they didn't feel loved, and they didn't have that love, and I don't want Black and brown people, poor people to continue to be emotional rag dolls about politics, about education, about public entities, about celebrities anymore. Like I want us to find loves within our own community, within our own people and our own families, so we can just hold people accountable and to the degree that we need to hold them to do their jobs. So the last and then to the other group, I would say this, man, as a Black person that you deeply offended, as a Black person that you thought less of, as a Black person that you called my brethren monkeys to, right? I don't hate you, man. Like, and I don't think your people gonna get rid of you. I think that I would just say go home. I would say go home and reconnect with the things that make you you and reflect on it. And I'm saying this as somebody who's not perfect. I'm saying this as somebody who can't throw stones at somebody because I've done horrible things in my life. And I'm still a human, and you still a human. And you know, you might not need to be in this political position and have the level of privilege that you once had, but I don't think that your community is just going to fully throw you away. There's going to be some very public people that's going to throw you away because it's all about political survival. See, everything is so much about survival, and this is touching me in a different way, David, because I grew up in a very survivalistic way, and when you live like there's no tomorrow, it works in the moment because it worked for me, but sometimes tomorrow comes, and you got to live at what you did to survive to get to where you are today. So if you thought that the political expediency of your survival as a politician was that I had to say these things, I had to ingratiate these people, I had to make these backdoor deals, and I had to do this thing, you know, there's something else that's missing there. And I say this not as somebody who's a kid on social media that ain't lived no life. I'm saying it as somebody who's been through it and had their own fuck ups in other different ways. So I don't hate you. I think you don't fuck with Black people, but there's a lot of people that don't fuck with Black people. It's Black people that don't fuck with Black people, but you're still a human. And what is the teachable moment? And what I would love to see from this country and in this moment actually is something that Nelson Mandela did. I don't know if you are familiar with how Nelson Mandela helped end apartheid, but he did this thing called it was a moment of reconciliation. And what he said was, for the black people in South Africa and the white people, he said, listen, if everybody comes to the square and admits what they did, so healing can actually start, nobody will be punished. Yep. Nobody will be punished. We are from Oakland, David. Like, we're not from there, but we live significant parts of our lives there. And I'm naming Oakland because it is the land of restorative justice. How do you restore a community? How do you restore faith? How do you take something that's been deeply ingrained in people that's 40, 50, 60, 70 years old? It don't happen overnight. And you got to start somewhere. But I truly do believe in restorative justice, because I want somebody to have the same grace for me. I'm not perfect. David, you not perfect. And these people not perfect. And the people that's hurt not perfect. We all a bunch of hurt people in a country that has a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of pain that is tied to that opportunity. And everybody's trying to survive. So if we could, for once, finally move from trying to survive and the actions that it takes to survive and the crabs in the bucket thing, and actually evolve as a people, I think that's what needs to happen. And I say that as somebody who needs his own grace in his own life, who has made his own mistakes. And I would be very, very, I'd be very embarrassed if some of my personal conversations were just public like that. And so I'm trying to give people the same grace that I want for myself, because I'm not going to do the thing that a lot of people on social media do, which is act perfect in the moment. Somebody just sinned differently than I sinned, but it's all sinning. And so before I close this out, man, I want to give people a quick preview, bro. They don't know, a lot of people don't know about this, man, but like I told you before, the South Star Classroom is a consultancy before we are a podcast, and David and I wrote this report, and it's coming out. I just saw a public release of it. That's why I'm sharing it. I'm not going into detail on it right now, but we will go through this. And our good friend Omar is helping with the translation right now. But there you go, Charles and David. We did a lot of research, and we learned a lot. And we learned a lot about how young people are viewing race, how young brown people, and it's built on another report that was about black students and what they felt. Learned a lot there. And so I just wanted to make sure that I shared that. And the other thing that I have to push.
Let me say one quick thing there on that. And so, like, when the report comes out, and when we kind of dive into the recommendations that come out of the report based on what we heard from the young people, is there is a recommendation. It's the last recommendation of, I think, 7 or 6 recommendations. Probably should have been the first, that touches on this particular subject matter, really on the Latino racism and bias and prejudice that too many of us hold. And so when I talk about recognizing that as Latinos, we are not a monolith. We come from so many different places, from so many different times, and we got here via different paths and dynamics. Like, we have to understand and recognize that, there's a lot that like binds us together, and there's probably more that makes us different. So you have to decide if you are going to lean into that difference to learn and grow and evolve as a people and to become stronger, or if you're going to use that difference to divide. And that's what we saw in these comments about these anti-indigenous comments from Nuria Martinez. And so when I heard her comments that were directed towards both the African-American community and then the Oaxacan community, I thought about this recommendation, Charles. Maybe if we got this report out, a year early and put it on her doorstep, maybe we wouldn't be here today.
Maybe it would have helped her, right? I mean, but that's and Omar is just simply out today. He's around though, and he wasn't able to do the research with us, but he is helping us with the translation. So it was a full team effort. And then also I put something out for free for my people. And again, unapologetically, I wrote this piece that is for it's aimed at Black boys. It is aimed at it's what I needed as the first of my family to go to college. And I needed, you know, my mom and dad didn't go to college. I didn't have an uncle. I didn't have an alum as a friend. So I needed this advice, and I wrote it in a way that is easy for young people to read. So this is how I would have been able to read it when I was 18 years old, and it's free. I just put the link out there, but you can go to charlescole3rd.com, and you can please leave your email address, but download it and share it. And even though I wrote it for 18-year-old Black boys, there are things that anybody going to college can utilize and use, and it's completely free.
Nice.
And I just wanted to share some of that wisdom and knowledge that I had, because I had to figure it out on my own, and and it caused a lot of heartache and strife. And then finally, I would just say, you know, I don't want my people hustling backwards, but finally what I would say is, if you did enjoy, if you get anything from this show, please like and subscribe. Please go to our YouTube page right now. We need you to go to our YouTube page and like it there, because I'm gonna just tell you, social media is hard for me. It does not make me feel good. I don't like it. It is hurting my heart. It has been for a long time. And for the last year, David, I've been trying to figure out how to get off social media, but still do the work that I do. So I found out that we could stream this directly to my website. People can go straight to YouTube or whatnot and have it. Mm-hmm. But at some point, I'm getting rid of Facebook and Twitter. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I just would say, as somebody who's had a very tough week, it has been a very, very difficult week. I would just say, have grace for yourself, have grace for people that you love, and have grace for the people that just around you. And I think that, you know, I think if we can start there, if we can actually use this moment that's happening in LA as a teachable moment, so we can actually become a better people, and not just a more, just not just become a people that just continues to persecute, but learn how to hide better. I think our kids will be better for it. And I think we'll be better for it. And I think that there's a lot of people hurting, but they don't feel like they got a place that they can go and talk about those things, you know. So that's my final piece. But David, this is your topic. Why don't you say the final word and take us home, brother? And you give me the nod, and I'll in the broadcast. All you.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to keep it real simple. Number one, thanks everybody for tuning in and for your comments. We really appreciate you being here, and also, you know, chiming in the comments. It helps us to, you know, both learn, you know, what you're thinking, what people are thinking in the community, and it helps to direct our conversation. So it's really good feedback. We appreciate the engagement. I think number two, based on the topic today, I'll keep it real simple. Just like, be good to one another, people. You know, be good to folks that are in your circles, that are not in your circles. You know, recognize everybody's humanity. I think, you know, if this thing in LA can teach us one thing, it's like, we got to step back, and we just got to, like, we should really be just recognizing people for their humanity. You know, teachers need to recognize every child in their class for their humanity. So this breaks down to so many different levels, you know, just stopping and taking stock of our personal biases, our personal prejudices, our personal racism, all of us, right? That lives in our hearts, that lives in our homes and in our communities. And you know, be good to one another. I think number three, that's probably it. I think I'm good. I look forward to next week, getting the band back together. And I appreciate you, Brother Charles. Dr. Cole.
You. Hey man, nah, man. You are my OG, and you've always had me, and I just appreciate you on a personal level, David. It is my honor, you know, to have this with you and Omar. And I know this is not something that, this is a difficult week, I think, for a lot of folks. But I would just say, man, part of the reason that I chose you for this and to do this with you, man, is because you have always just kept it real and kept it 100, and like, you just got a good heart, man. You got a good heart, and I will ride for you, and I will fight for you until the end of it, man. That's David. Omar will be back with blacker hair because he is a supermodel. I am Charles. We are the South Star Classroom. Please like our YouTube page. Please, please, please go there and make sure that you have that as a backup, because this will not always be on Facebook or Twitter. But we thank you, and we are grateful. South Star Classroom, we got you. Peace.